Hi, we're here. Welcome to Friday Inspiration for Photographers. And honestly, really, it's just inspiring for everyone. Let's face it. Today, I have my friend and brilliant colleague, Lauri Novak, in the house.
All right. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too
It's
because
gonna be fun.
we're always talking privately, and I'm like, God, we should be sharing this with the world because we're brilliant. This is for those of you that are new to this particular event. I can't decide. Like people call it a podcast, and then I start getting rashy because a podcast sounds too official and too much like a commitment, and that makes me nervous. So I call it my live stream. I call it my chat. I call it my thing. I call it my Friday Inspiration for Photographers, which is a mouthful, but there it is. And so every week we do something. Sometimes I'm just sharing my process, but lately I've been having friends over to chat over, smoothie or coffee or tea or whatever. And Lauri today is in the house. So Lauri, for those of you who don't know her, I don't know why you don't know her, but you need to know her. And we'll share her websites and everything. She's a photographer. She's a mentor. She's an author. She's brilliant. And I'm super, super stoked that she's here. So hi.
Hi. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. And those of you who are watching on Facebook, you can throw comments and questions in the chat. I'll refresh that page and check. And so Lauri, if I'm looking away, it's because I've got Facebook over here. And then we have a chat in Zoom of my subscribers who we get in a little early and chit chat and they all go on mute. And then they throw questions and comments in there and they're always keeping me amused. So hi guys. I love it when you're here. So, God, so interestingly, so some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is gear, strangely enough, and flow, just flow. And like, what am I trying to say? The thing about your vision, doing your vision, no matter what. But all that aside, what are you working on these days?
Well, my biggest project this year is trying to sell work commercially, through art agencies, not developers, like designers and companies that work with hotels, hospitals, that sort of thing. It's been on my list for several years, and I've never actually bitten the bullet and done it. And this year was the year to do that. So I started that in January, and it's a consistent, you have to update every month, send out updated images and whatever, and just keep on top of it. So that's my main thing. I just redid my website. I'm kind of working on tours, sort of in a half-hearted way at the moment, because I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing yet with my next year. So I really want to do Amsterdam. That's at the top of my list. So I need to start doing some planning for that.
Yeah, planning. And then you can always shift gears, if it doesn't turn out, do something different.
Yeah. And I do that pretty easily. So.
Yeah, you do.
You talk about flow. I'm like, go with the flow. Is
go with the flow.
How I operate. Yeah. It's pretty much how I operate.
Reorganize the flow. So how is it going connecting? People are always curious about the art world. And because the thing that a lot of people don't realize about photography, I'm saying this to the general, our general audience, is that you kind of there's, I don't know, silos, I guess you could say. There's online art. There's what you're doing with the dealers and so on and so forth. There's, working with clients. There's, with art, there's teaching. And then there's a whole bunch of different avenues for that too. And each one of them take a different effort, a different setup.
Yep. Yeah, it is all very different.
It really is. And you're such a whiz at marketing and planning and all that kind of thing that I'm always fascinated by how you go about it. Because I was working on that last year, took a break to get my retreat online, which we're doing now. And it's like, holy cow, it's so amazing. It's just really amazing watching people.
That's so cool.
Yeah, making the breakthroughs and stuff. But I'm going to get back to it as well here pretty soon. So how are you going about it? Like what kinds, whatever you want to feel like you want to share, but
no, it's fine. I'm here to help people because that's one of the other things that I do. And I had someone help me, right? So I have a friend who does this, and appearances are one thing, right? You can think somebody's being very successful, but you don't really know. I mean, people think that I'm successful, but I don't really make that much money off of my photography. I do
Not yet.
okay. I mean, it's okay, right? Not yet. And it's not zero. How about that? um, but reaching out to people that do what you want to do and ask questions is one of the best ways to find, without spending all your time trying to research it and invent the wheel again. So what I've done is I have a list of galleries, I have a list of art agencies or designers, places that do interior decorating, and mostly from just finding them on other people's websites, Instagram, looking for those kind of companies, and then getting contact information or just general, contact information if you don't have anybody specific. And then I set up a sample document with sample images, my artist statement, and then I have a whole separate document with pricing. And I send it religiously every month with new images, So I've sent out architectural 2 months. Last month, I actually sent out some automotive stuff because I thought, well, it's different, right? And they might get a ton of architectural stuff, or they probably get a ton of florals and travel photos, from people. Right. And I thought, they're decorating business offices, they're decorating for all different kinds of people. And there's people out there who are into cars. So, and my automotive work is very fine art automotive. It's not like a picture of a whole car. It's usually hood ornaments or details of a car.
Right.
So last month I shared that. This month I'll probably go back to a little bit of architecture and Chicago specific, possibly, and just see what happens. I had one lady reply back to me after the first month who she's like, I don't even work with photographers. I don't sell photography to my clients, but I love your stuff and I'm saving this. Keep sending me updates. I'm like, that's a win in my book. She may never buy from me, but that's a win because she noticed my work and it wasn't something she normally does. So
yeah,
I'll take that. And in the last 3 months, I've had a couple more say, I'm looking for new work, blah, blah, and stuff like this takes time. You're not going to get a sale right away. They're working with different clients who want different things and it changes all the time. So
I find too that the, photography is sort of like that was a case in point. Photography is often seen as in that world as like the ugly stepchild.
Yeah.
So to be able to do something I'm going to talk about fine art and not that you can define it for real, but a way to think about what fine art is and how to, because that is a different way to frame your work if your desired result or audience is what you're talking about or anything that relates to fine art, even competitions or what have you. So when you're successful at it like that, that's huge. That's more than a win. That's like a win of a personal and a genre or an industry.
Right.
That's huge. And that's the kind of thing that could actually change the way people think about photography too, because it can be fine art in that way. But you really have to be conscious about creating that.
Right. And you would think that after all these years, the people who originated the whole fine art photography thing, Edward Weston and that whole F64 group, we're still fighting that. We're still trying to make ourselves fit in that world.
Right. Right. So fine art, like I usually tell people, I'm curious to know your take, because I usually tell people when you're thinking fine art, you're talking about usually you could think of it as either one subject or two at most, or if there are two, they've got to be related to somehow qualifying one another, and that it represents your specific point of view, your opinion, your take, it's very personal. It's not a general, here's a car, it's like, this is a thing about the car that I think is really cool, and I'm going to make a really special statement about this. Mm-hmm. Is that how you look at it?
I think so. I think that you have the whole, and I kind of group landscape into this because you have all those gorgeous, amazing images, right? Mm-hmm. Of sunrises and sunsets usually, or big, huge mountain ranges, and that kind of thing. But I think that to get past that, some of that reminds me of the old, you could used to buy, and you still can, if you go to Cost Plus World Market or some of those places, to buy the art that they sell in places like Target or whatever too.
Right.
It's kind of like the manufactured stuff, and
Right.
they're pretty and they're nice, but they're not different, and I think to take the art a step further in photography, to make it art, is to make it different than the what's being manufactured in a factory, or that they're producing 8,000 of these or 12,000 of these or however many they need in their stores.
And when you say different, like, people get, then their eyes glaze over it, like, well, how do I make it different? I think part of it has to do with what I just said about making it a very, 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 go down the rabbit hole, make it really specific and really committed and really you. But then the other part of it is then finding the market, and it doesn't just come to you.
No, it doesn't. And for me, that's been the hardest thing, is finding my audience. And I'm working on that too. That's something I'm also working on, because, there's people, everybody likes something different. You can't sell the same thing to every person. It doesn't work that way, no matter what it is, basically. Mm-hmm. So
and you have to develop the audience for each silo, because I'm known because of Fujifilm, because of teaching, because of, I don't know, just sort of how it all unfolded for me in the photography world. Mm-hmm. I'm known more as a, what do you think about this? And how can I, for photographers, like, how can I be a better photographer type, like under that heading?
Right.
So when I like, and I do fine artwork, but it's kind of come out of left field, and there'll be like installations in a boutique hotel. And it's because I know this person, it kind of comes through these other avenues.
Right.
So that when I want to expand on that, my audience that wants Fujifilm and how to be a better photographer isn't so much interested in buying my stuff. A few will, but, that's a whole other audience. And then people ask me about, well, like I get asked about art storefronts or places like that maybe offer a way of learning how to crack the code on that market. And that's what makes, like an art storefront useful and valuable, because they actually help you with the marketing.
Right.
And so I'm also going to mention SmugMug, because we're always talking about where to put our images, and I use both, but for different things. And this is how specific it all is. So art storefronts is my fine art sales online. And then, I can use it to refer clients to, or like the people that you're contacting to. But SmugMug is once I am working with a client and we're going through the image selection process and so on and so forth, SmugMug is much easier to work with clients behind the scenes.
Right.
So they both specialize, and I need them both. Can't do it without both.
Right. When it's funny, I was having a conversation with, I write for photofocus.com, and the editor and I were coming up with ideas and stuff. And we were trying to work with one of our partners at the moment, which happens to be Fine Art America, which is a general site where people can upload their images to sell, or just if you want to, get prints and things. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's a difference. An art agent actually told me one time that I should take myself off of there because it diminishes my work. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I get it. And I did take myself down for several months, but then I needed it for another reason. And I thought, I have all these other random images that I sell on there, that I've been selling on there for like 10 years.
Right.
Those images aren't going on my fine art site. I'm not putting those on my website because they don't fit with my fine artwork.
Right.
But people are still buying them.
Right.
I sell some images as stock. Well, those aren't going on my website.
I was just going to say, it's like having
you still have like, I don't go out and shoot only architecture all day long, or only automotive all day long. I shoot all kinds of things, and some of those images are worthy of putting somewhere, so.
Right. I mean, when you have so many images, they can all be working for you. If you just think it through and decide how to present them, and then decide what thread has to go to which market and how to contact. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Right.
And people sometimes say, like art storefronts, is it worth it? And like, have you sold a lot? And I'm like, wrong questions.
That's what people always, and I always use the Field of Dreams as an example, because I've had this question asked me for several years, like, how do you sell so much? And I'm like, you have to do the work. You
Yeah.
can't, it's not the field of dreams. You can't build it and they just come, because that's not how it works. And I don't care what you sell, anything.
And
You have
nobody
to do
else is going to
it.
do it for you, no matter what
No,
anybody else
no,
says.
no. And your friends aren't your audience. Your friends aren't your customers. Your parents, your family, they're not the ones you need to be, they all love your stuff. I have a group of, 300-400 people that I know from photography, but they're not my customers, right?
Right.
They're not my clients. They're not the ones buying my stuff. So it always amazes me that people don't see that part or understand that you have to still do the work. You have to find your audience, and you have to find out and figure out the best way to market to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tricky because, like I think I was talking to you the other day when I developed when I was coaching voice, to television news broadcasters, which I did for 25 years. I developed my base. I knew someone in the industry. He introduced me around, but I went to every single broadcast conference in the country, like for years. I would go every year, not necessarily all of them every single year, but I always went to something every year and met people and went to the parties and pressed the flesh and blah, blah, blah. So then the question becomes, how do you do that online? Because we can't do it the same way, yet it's the same process of meeting people and bonding with them and finding out what they need and how you can help them. And so just learning how to connect with those people and where like those mini conferences are in essence.
Right. And which groups you should belong to or maybe get into or, start. And then it's a whole different thing. If you get into a group of people that are potential clients or customers, you don't want to be in there trying to push your stuff, because that's not the reason for the group. But, it's a balance to try to figure out how to connect with them in a way that gets them to get to your site or to get to the things that you're trying to sell them,
or get them in a chat or get them, because like in the group, you're just there to be part of the group and offer whatever assistance and interest thoughts you can. But if somebody and you resonate, then you take them out of the group. You don't have that.
Yes. Right.
You go have a chat or a phone call.
Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I don't know how we got off on this topic, but it's something a lot of people ask me about this, and because, they're like, I don't know, I might want to sell my work. And I'm like, okay.
And when you think about that, there's, everybody is a photographer, everybody. So you think about the amount of work that's out there, and trying to make yours stand out and trying to sell it it's really a little crazy if you think about it. Like, why am I doing this?
I know, it is nuts. I often tell people to start locally because, depending on
honestly, that's what I was told. And I didn't want to do that, and I didn't, and I probably should have, but
well, you did. You know what?
You did doing my own thing.
You did a little bit in Chicago because
I do. That's
Chicago.
That's true. Yeah. Because where I live, there's several art galleries, but people aren't coming to where I live for art. It just isn't, Yeah. But yes, I have had pieces in galleries in Chicago, and so there's that. Yeah.
Right. So that's pretty cool. Very good. Well, and that's a topic we could do a whole thing on. We may have to one day. So one of the things too that I love, I want to put these together actually. So you're known in many circles for your architectural work, but you also do stunning landscape work. But the architectural angle is present in both because it's kind of how you see, period.
Yes. And I also believe, Mother Nature is like the ultimate architect. If you think about the Fibonacci spiral and think about how things are created and the structure of nature and things and how they're made, it's all very architectural if you really think about it. So do you want
to show some of your work?
Yeah, I can.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
While you're getting that going, I'm going to just kind of jump over here to Facebook for a second.
Do you want me to share my screen?
You sure. Oh yeah, I got to let you do that.
Good. You guys can see that now, right?
Yep.
Let me close out this stuff. So, and I just popped into my website, into my fine art galleries. And I have an architectural site that's color and black and white. So, and I it's just, like this particular image was a specific moment where you either get lucky or you stand there and wait, because this happens at the Milwaukee Art Museum all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You just happen to get the right person doing the right thing,
Right.
in any moment. Um, this
But you have an
is
eye. Go
not.
back to that for a second. You have an eye, and this is a lot of times, you know how people are always like, how did you see that? And
Yeah.
like, okay, yes, this happens all the time. But the moment was this woman is in black, her elbows, the angle of her arms and elbows, her hair, the shape of the phone, the just everything reflects the architecture around it. So how do you train yourself to see those moments?
Do you know, it's really funny because you're sitting there going, the shape of her elbows. And I'm like, wow, I never noticed that.
But see, that's kind of
this is like, I try to explain stuff like this to people, and it's like, I can't help it, right? It comes naturally to me. I don't look for that. I must see it and feel it when it's there, which causes me to snap the photo at the time. Um, but I'm not specifically standing there going, wait, oh, if she would bend her arms, like instead of having them this way, that would be a better photo.
well, I mean, I think that goes back to, I'm always, me, I'm always going on about finding your artistic voice, but in the personal path, or part of the personal path to that is this is like, I've known you for years, and this is how you think. You like to put things in an order. You like to
Yes.
have things organized. You
Yes.
like to, kind of put things in a sequence. That you have a very, and it isn't restrictive. It isn't, it isn't like it has to be this way. It's not like that. It's just like
My husband might
find.
disagree with that.
I'm well
No,
in
I'm kidding.
in this whole
No, I
realm.
know.
That's
Yes. I'm
yeah.
kidding.
I mean, I tend to be a lot more Isadora Duncan. I'm just wow,
Yes. No, I
like
love that. Right.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I wish I've actually learned a lot from you about that, about being a little more organized and letting things kind of bake and um, stuff like that. So I see that in your work. I mean, look at your backdrop. It's
I picked that out specifically because it had an architectural feel to it.
yeah.
The rest of the other stuff was all flowery, and I'm not flowery. So
Yeah. And you have that. And so you naturally recognize the moments when there's the kind of structure that you find
yes.
pleasing, and it's really consistent throughout your work. So show a couple more architectural ones because I think they're so beautiful. I love looking at them. But then I want you to show some of your landscapes because
Okay.
they
All
have a
right.
similar feel.
I'm
Oh, that's
trying
so
to.
cool.
That's in Rotterdam. And I mean, again, it helps when you have architecture that's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but then you have Gothic, this is pretty interesting architecture. Can I take something that's not, what do I got here? I mean, that's something that's kind of an everyday thing, like in London, but
Right.
can you make it be more interesting or be an architectural shot or even just corners of buildings and windows with
Right.
reflections? There's this is one of the things I always say, there's more to what you see. Like when you initially see this building, you probably notice the corner and the windows, but if you stop and actually look a little bit further, you see the reflections in it, and then it becomes something different, and it adds a depth, and it just makes it a different than what you initially see in your head as a building with windows.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's really, and it really, this is like the fine art, the difference between taking the picture of, oh, here's a cool building with reflections, which is a sort of a general travelogue-ish approach, which I'm not knocking. I'm just saying this
right,
is a fine art approach to that same moment where you go, I want to look, it's more specific. I want to look at the corners. I want to see what pleases me. Oh, look at the pattern. I love that repeating
yes,
pattern. Now, how much of that pattern does the thing that
right,
makes me happy? Snap.
right. And in a case like that, I would be moving my lens around, to
Right.
to get the right spot.
Right. I mean, I do that with trees. Same
Right.
thing. Okay.
The landscape. What those are going to be kind of under travel. So okay, I'm going to go big or go home, right? Because this is the
Yeah.
like epic landscape. Antarctica. Um, I am also drawn to mountains. I've always been drawn to mountains.
Yep.
Um, so that Antarctica is amazing for that.
Hmm.
I have a little bit of everything in this album, so bear with me. This is again, it's a place that's just not describable. You can't, although I just shared a article I found on Lonely Planet by a guy who went there and described it very well and
I want
described
to
the
have you
awe.
sent that to
Yeah,
me. I haven't read it yet. I can't wait.
he just did a really good job of everything that he really felt and saw when he went there, because you don't expect it, and then you don't know what to do when you do get there. So these are kind of the landscape
and okay,
types.
so this ties in too with the other thing that I love when you talk about it, which you're really good at, which is, sticking with your vision no matter what. Because when you're on a trip like this, you got a whole bunch of people shooting a certain way and the boat's pointing you a certain way. And there's a lot kind of asking you to do things in quote a certain way. And you never do that. You always find a way to use the situation, not judge it, not be resistant to it, but find your own, let it take you to your own take.
Right. And the best example I have of this is the first time I went to the Arctic. It was part of there was a photography symposium attached to the expedition. And you're out on the water sometimes 2 days at a time. And the same with the Arctic trip also, because it takes you 2 days to cross the Drake Passage. There isn't really anything to photograph when you're in the middle of an ocean, right? I mean, there's always something to photograph, if you ask me, but
if it was me, I'd be photographing myself throwing up the whole way.
I have pictures of the barf bags on the, because they put them every so often during the ship. So, there's stuff to shoot. But everybody's like, oh, birds. Oh, there's birds everywhere. We can photograph birds. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to photograph birds. I don't really care. Like, they're interesting because they're different, right? I've never seen the Arctic tern. I've never seen this kind of seagull or this kind of whatever, and I thought I suck at shooting birds and things like that. So there's a bird photographer and several other professional photographers who are like, this is how you should do it. This is what you should do. I'm like, okay, I have a few decent shots, but I'm not going to stand here and take home 300 images of a seagull. I'm just not.
Right.
So then I started looking around at like, what else is there? I have images of details of the ship, right? Like the deck chairs all stacked up with snow on them, like, which makes kind of a cool black and white image. Then I started taking abstract water images, right? So
I love those. Show a couple of those. Those are so cool.
Let me see if I have a.
I see one over there. I see one down like.
Oh, there's like this one.
Yeah, that one. I love that one. Oh, I love that one.
That was a blue sky, blue, white, puffy cloud day, and that was calm waters basically. I have ones from the Arctic trip where it's not calm and it's very dark gray, but there's tons of motion and splashing, in the water. So it was like, one of my mentors was on this trip also, and he said he watched me just find my stride, because I was uncomfortable. You're with all these other people who are doing all this other stuff the same, and they're here, they all want to learn, we all there to learn. And I was just getting like, I cannot do this. This is not,
and there's a certain amount of pressure.
Not true. Yes, there is. Cause then you feel like you're being like a rebel and you don't, you're too good to learn or whatever.
Right.
So eventually it was, there's me hanging my camera over the edge and shooting straight down and doing what I do, and then I just got comfortable with it. And then it was like, this is what I'm going to do because this is my trip also. Right. And I'll learn what I want to learn and what I can learn, but I'm still going to be true to who I am. And I'm still going to take the images that I see, and I have some bird images and that's fine.
And that's the thing that I find myself telling people who like to shoot a lot of different things and I can't find my voice and I know I need to pick a genre. I'm like, no, you need to find that thread of what it is you love, that is but it has to be so damn specific about what it is you love, because I always know, no matter where you go, I can recognize a Lauri Novak, and you shoot a lot of different subjects, but you shoot it from this perspective that you have that is very recognizable no matter what you shoot. And I think that's a superpower.
It's funny because I couldn't tell you what that is myself.
I
know other people see it. Yeah. It's a huge compliment though. People know,
Yeah. I think sometimes we don't necessarily know those things about ourselves. It takes someone else to say, hey. Right. So we have some comments. Let's see. Loving the Antarctic. Antarctica photographs. I love you, Lauri. You're my mentor. I love that. I love that you wrote
she's
that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then here in our chat, thank you, Cameron, for sharing all these links. Yeah. And it's like, it flows, you know how you flow and you wait for the shot. Landscape photographers do that too. I just, as a group, generally, like landscape photographers get the part where you got to wait, but then they walk away and I'm like, you waited for that.
Right.
I don't mean to put anybody down.
No, and I totally understand that.
Yeah. But seriously, I mean, like you want to get the epic shot, get it. That doesn't take very long. You may have to wait a while. But then what about the water shot like yours? Like you walked away from Antarctica with such a plethora. It is like a,
Penguins.
500-page book of images of all different kinds. It could have been, they were all Antarctica, but they were like far away and up close, and the bird and the people and the, the whole thing, the book of the experience.
But see, and that's what, and you use this a lot as storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. We're photographers and we're storytellers. So when you're on a trip, you want to be able to tell the whole story of the trip.
Right.
I said, it's like, I used this on something the other day. I was like, it's like people who take pictures of their food in a restaurant, but that's all they do that's all you see. So there's way more to that story. What's the restaurant look like inside? Where is it? What's the street look like outside? It's the whole thing. And when you're traveling, especially, you want to come home with that story. In my opinion, I remember you want to be able to have all of it.
Exactly. My first trip to France was for a voice job. And I had just gotten it was back in my Canon days. So I got my Canon 5D2 and it was like, ooh, and I was so excited. And we took the gear and my husband was along with me and we went out like till 3 a.m. And I mean, we had an experience, like I did my job, which was bizarre as it was, which was great and different and interesting and, and just a really different kind of job when you get flown to Paris to do a voice job. And then I had a particular idea in my mind of the kind of shots I wanted to get in Paris, but I kind of had doubts about my ability. So I kept trying, no matter where I went in Paris, I took the same picture. So I came home with this cards full of the same freaking picture all over Paris. And yet we had this, like the night that we went out after work and we were, we closed down the Louvre and I got this picture of the old part as the gates were shutting and they kicked us out because they were very nice, but when we were the last people there. And then we went walking and we saw this amazing thing in the snow. And then we went and had, what did we have? Pastries and wine and cognac at 2 a.m. in this little cafe. And then we missed the subway. So we had to walk the, however many miles back to our, it was a night. And then the next day they were so fussy and worried that I had overtired myself and I might be too tired to work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you high? And this was energizing to me. And out of all that, I came home with the same picture about 300 times.
But you weren't there to photograph the trip. That wasn't your initial. So you got to experience everything though.
That trip was the one that changed everything. That was 2010. Right. And that changed everything for me. In terms of travel, in terms of shooting a book, in terms of bringing home the whole experience. And what did I think about the experience? Not with somebody else. Like I remember I had somebody in mind that I want to get some shots like that. And I was shooting his shots over and over and over.
Yes. And that's something I was thinking about too, as we were talking about what we were going to discuss today is how, everybody wants to get those shots. It seems like everybody wants to get those shots. And it's like, well, do your own thing, right? You don't want to wear the same clothes as everybody else or the same car as everybody, do your own thing. That's how you get the shots that are different.
And, I find myself going to some amazing places going, I got to get this shot. I just do. And it's the same one everybody else does. And you do. Right. But how long does that take? 30 seconds?
But you take it and then you move on.
Yeah. You're not going to stand there all day and take the same one over and over again, except I did that in Paris already. And I can tell you, not that great. No. It was, we all have our learning curves and our learning lessons. And it's funny.
But you wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't done that.
Right.
So it's part of the truth.
And it was funny though, that I did that I fell into that trap because I've been photographing my whole life. I've been photographing grew up with a camera in my hands. my mother's parents. Okay, my mother
Yeah.
was born in 1922. So they photographed her from the time she was a toddler forever. And her grandmother used to make all of her own clothes. She looked a bit like Norma Jean before she was
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe, this tall, thin, gorgeous, full-lipped beauty, in the 40s with her incredible suits and handmade clothing that were like out of Vogue magazine. It was incredible. They documented all that. So I grew up with a camera and we were documenting our life and our animals and the ranch and everything. And then, cut. And so like that's how I spent all my life and developing my own work and stuff like this. Then I go to Paris and take the same picture 5,000 times. I'm like, what's wrong with you? So we all learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's overwhelming
so
too,
going back to
sometimes.
what you were saying about, you said we were talking about, we were going to talk a little bit about gear too, which is really counterintuitive, but I think is an important part of this conversation from this perspective, because a lot of people talk about gear and what the best gear is and what lens do you use and how much. And I know in landscape, I'm always getting the frantic texts and emails. I don't know what to pack. What lenses do I take?
Well, if you have to ask that question, you have too many lenses,
right?
That's how I think.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it is, you're always afraid you're going to miss out. And the truth is, I remember training horses. I trained horses for 45 years. So my teacher, who taught me everything I know about training, I had that same angst about my horse, who was like my best horse ever. And I was so nervous about making training mistakes that I could hardly function. And he sat me down and he goes, okay, just figure you're going to make mistakes. Just plan on it. Plan on all the mistakes. You're going to make them. I'll help you fix them. Now let's move on. And my feeling is, if you limit your lenses, you're going to wish you had another lens at some point. Just, know that in advance, plan to get over it, say, oh, you silly Manili, and work with what you have, because it'll make you a better artist. It'll make you see better. You'll go deeper and you'll have a lot more fun, because you're not going to miss everything because you're fishing around in your stupid bag.
Right.
Or, some other piece of gear.
Or you're in pain because you don't want to walk another mile with 8,000 pounds on your back. Yeah.
I talk like, I knew this all along, but how did I learn that?
I know how you
by
learned
doing
it.
that.
And I don't like to carry extra stuff, period. So like, I'm the person, like, even, growing up, I'm like, I don't want to carry a purse. Give me, I put my stuff in my pockets. So for me, I've never wanted all the gear. I've never wanted to carry all that stuff. And to this day, I still only have, I have 2 lenses that I use. I have 4 lenses. I have a 50 and 100 also. And the 50 probably, I don't know if it even works anymore. It hasn't been used in so long, because it's not something I use for what I do. And right. I have the macro lens, which I do play with. But otherwise I have a 17 to 40 and a 100 to 400. And I shoot with the 100 to 400 probably 90% of the time.
That's a great lens.
Depending on where I'm at. It depends, obviously in places like where there's epic landscapes and mountains and things, you want to use the wide angle too. But
right.
Shooting architecture, shooting in the cities, I almost don't even take my bag. A lot of times I'll be like, you know what? I should just leave it all at home and just carry my camera and my lens. And that's it. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of getting on that page too. It just really, in landscape, it depends on where I'm going, right. The scope. So I have to do a fair bit of planning in terms of what's the scope and what's the distance and why am I going and what do I want to walk away with and hone it down. I know when my last artist voice retreat in Italy, I was like, okay, I got to follow my own advice because I still, I'm the same as everybody else. I sit down and I go, I want to take this and I want to take this. And I'm like, I let myself go there because, I pat myself on the head over here. Isn't she cute? So cute. You're so funny. And then I went, all right, did a lot of research, got on Google Earth and looked at where we were going. And I went, all right, what do I want this trip to be about? What do I want to feel and sense and experience? And what distance am I from all of it? And what do I absolutely need? And so I did the thing where I took my Fujifilm X-T3. Why didn't I take a GFX? I can't remember. I think I maybe just didn't have it at that point, or I knew I wanted to take a long lens because I knew there was going to be some range once we got in the Dolomites that I'd want it for a few things. But I took my 18 to 135 and used that 90% of the time. I took my little kit 55 to 200, which is like in full frame equivalent 300 at the far end. And it's sharp end to end and it's wonderful. And that was really all I needed. But you know what? I did the same thing everybody does, which is, oh, I'm going to be in Venice. I should bring the wide angle. Should I not? Should I? And my 10 to 24 isn't that big and I had room and I threw it in.
Right.
And I was like,
did you use it?
No. You know how I used it? About the fourth day I went, I feel so stupid that I brought this lens. I should take it out and use it once. And I did. And I threw all the images away because I didn't like any of them. They just didn't do the job. I mean, I had decided, I don't know all the shots that are going to happen, but I knew what I wanted to show up with. I knew what I wanted to capture. And I knew this lens had enough range to do it. And it's a beautiful lens. So really, I shot the 18 to 135, Venice, Burano, everywhere we went. And then one morning sunrise that we did up on one of the refugios up there in the Italian Alps, I used my 55 to 200 and carved those gorgeous little mountain, chunk downs that are so gorgeous.
Right.
And otherwise, it was 18 to 135 the whole time because I can shoot faux macro that way. I can shoot everything.
And if it comes to it, like you did in Zion, you can shoot a pano with multiple images. If you really want that wide shot, that's all you have to do. And I do that with my 100 to 400 or my macro lens. I use my macro lens that way too sometimes. So you don't necessarily have to have that lens with, but I think what you said, a lot of what you said about knowing what you want in advance, what you want to capture and how you want to capture it will help you decide to bring those. But I think that people don't necessarily know that enough about themselves, about how they shoot, or they don't stop to think about it or learn that about themselves and their photography. Like, I know this about myself. I know that I'm going to take my 100 to 400 and that's going to be the lens that gets used the most. Even if I have 4 other lenses in my bag, I know that's how I shoot all the time. So, I think that people don't always know themselves. Take a minute. If you use Lightroom, go look at what lens you can look up how many times, how many images are shot with a particular lens in your Lightroom catalog. And you might be surprised.
Yeah.
Which
or
lens you use all the time.
If you're not sure, like I have people reach out to me sometimes and say, I'm just not sure what, I have these lenses. What do you think I should do next? And, I try to find out a little bit more about kind of where they're gravitating. Cause in the beginning, it's hard to know. And then like even recently, I recommended the 18 to 135 based on what I was told about what this person was looking at, because if you get a lens like that, especially if it has good resale value, which that one does, it's, then go explore and find out because your results are what will tell you what to do next.
Right.
So you got to get in and get dirty and try things. I mean, that's how you found out. You probably shot, I bet. So you shoot Canon. So you probably use the 24 to 70 a lot and went, you know what? No, in the beginning.
I've only ever had. Okay. So when I very first
think about the beginning.
Well, the very first DSLR I had, because I shot film. I mean, I've had a camera like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So if you have a lot of experience,
10,
right. Well, then things, but people who start don't necessarily know things.
Usually your kit lens is usually like an 18 to 55. Yeah. Right? That's generally what comes on your first camera when you get it, the DSLRs that are out,
Right.
And then you want more reach than that usually is how it progresses, because 18 to 55 isn't that much.
Right. And somebody just in the comments said 70 to 300 for me.
That's what I shot with my film camera.
Yeah. And that's probably, that was full frame. I believe what he's talking about is full frame. So, 55 to 200 because in an APS-C sensor is about that range, which is really great. It covers the 7D. Oh, so that's crop sensor too. So he's shooting that. Either way, it still puts you in a range that you can work with in most environments.
Right.
And then go from there. So the point that we're really making here is get in, get dirty, use whatever you have, and then start like it's sort of like being a little bit of a ninja in terms of, all right, how much do I love this? Is this what I love? Do I want to be closer? Do I want to pull things in more? Do I want to, get wider? Like what am I kind of craving? What am I feeling like? And let the results determine your gear and your vision determine your gear.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why that's so hard to grasp, but because there's so many people out there with so many opinions. You need to have this lens and this lens.
Well, and it's marketing.
That camera.
It's also marketing. Camera companies are in the business of selling equipment and gear, and they're, you should have this. Well, just for another example, right? 100 to 400 is a wildlife lens. I don't shoot wildlife, but that's what it's marketed
shoot people.
as.
You photograph people. Yeah. That's kind of wildlife.
So it's that side of it too. I think is we're kind of inundated with those messages.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because, I'm a professional Fujifilm X photographer. I'm an ambassador of the brand, and I absolutely 100% the congruent part of that is that I chose Fujifilm before I was ever that, because it fits my vision, because it fits everything about it was what I was looking for. And I tried when I was switching from, it's a long story. I won't go into it, but anyway, when I was looking to switch, I tried a number of different brands because I had this laundry list of things like these are musts, these are nice to haves. And I was almost out of ideas until somebody suggested Fujifilm. And I was like, oh my God, this is me. They built this for me. So, that and
it's personal. Cameras are personal. Really, and I don't think that, that's the mentality that you have to kind of think about. It's personal, So and
then by the same token, if you, I've done this on retreats with everyone, not with everyone, but, with certain people who get in a kind of a rut of this is how I shoot. Like, I always shoot with my 100 to 400, or I always shoot with my wide angle, or I always is always scary and dangerous.
Yes.
And so I think we had an evening, because I always would, we'd have these little events where we'd photograph things that we would normally never photograph. Like we had a cooking class at one of them. And then we were able to go in the kitchen of this, beautiful boutique hotel. And, and we photographed as we were making our own food, but also as the chef was making his food, photograph. Mm-hmm. So this person is like a total wine aficionado, food aficionado. And he was going to come in with his usual lens and do his usual thing. I said, no, put on your macro, hand hold it, no tripod, and photograph your experience. Photograph the stuff that you go, ooh, I love that. Right. Because he loves all that stuff. So his images were fascinating and they were great. But he's like, I feel so awkward. He's a really good photographer.
Yeah.
But you get into these. Loretta Young was an actress in the 40s. And when I was in acting school, people used to always tell the Loretta Young story, which was she used to, in interviews, talk about when they say, your method and how you act and how you prepare. And one of the things that she always said she did, I don't know, I wasn't there, but she said she never put her makeup on, because in the 40s, they put on makeup every day, full on camera makeup. She never did it in the same order 2 days in a row.
Because it gets you out of your...
Yeah, because she said, as an actor, anything you do by rote is death to an actor, because some part of you just goes to sleep.
And that's true in anything, I think.
I think it is too. I think it's true with photography. I'm just seeing some comments here in the chat about looking at Fujifilm after using Nikon, Canon, Sony. So that, that's the brand discussion. Blown away when you saw the results on the Fujifilm X series. So, and then there's, in any camera brand, like in Fujifilm, we have the X series, which are the smaller, you get the smaller cameras, and then the GFX, which is large format. It's much bigger and heavier, but it does a different thing. Yeah. So like people are like, oh, I don't know, should I get a big one? And I'm like, it depends. Oh, or should I get the 50S or the 100S? And I'm like, well, let's talk about what your goal is here. Yeah. You want a new computer.
Right, right. I would love a GFX, right? Like
Yeah.
I got to shoot one with you in Tahoe there for a
Yeah.
couple of days.
Well, with you, the 50S would be like without having to upgrade your computer. But the thing is, they don't make 100 to 400 equivalent.
Right. And I mean, it's not something that I would work for me at the moment,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Well,
as
it would.
beautiful as
It would be really cool to see what you would create with a GFX, though. I have to say, because of the way it sees and because of the way you see, I think that
right.
would be a really interesting
Maybe I should rent one for a while.
combination. It would be interesting. You know, the biggest telephoto it has is 100 to 200, which is
That's fine.
it's 0.79, I think. I don't know what the math is. 0.79 anyway. It's about that. And so it's like a mid telephoto, not extreme. And I find it, you know, I have found, like, because I beta test a lot of these cameras and lenses and create images for different projects and launches and things like that. And so, you know, for instance, the 250, the GFX and the GF 250. Now the 250 is, I mean, the most gorgeous lens. It is the most gorgeous lens. But what I discovered, talk about a blind spot, is they sent it to me and they said, okay, we want landscape images with this, because they'd mostly been promoting it as a portrait lens, which it's gorgeous.
Right.
So I take it out in landscape and I'm like, okay, these pictures are gorgeous, but how in the heck can this be a landscape lens? I was mad for a week. I had it for a few weeks, but I was mad for the first week because I'm like, how am I supposed to create landscape images with a 250 prime? And then, you know, after a while, I kept thinking I would start having ideas and I wasn't. And I finally had to stop and go, I think you're going about this the wrong way. And I had to go, I had to say, because I always talk to my gear. I always ask it questions. And I said, so what do you see? Like, never mind what I see. Right. What do you see? And they started going out and just asking it what it saw, and it started showing me what it saw. And I was like, I never look at this focal length. I skip it in my mind. Right. I go from here to far away, and I never even look in the 250 range. And I was like, wow, was that ever a kind of like a kick in the ass for me? Yeah. And then I couldn't stop seeing it that distance, and it was just stunning what I was able to do with it. But it took that first week of just going, I hate this. Why are they asking me to do this? I mean, to be perfectly honest, it isn't always the most fun when you have to do something that, you know, you're like, oh, really?
Well, you have a different mindset too, when you know you have to create something, and you know,
and people say, you know, I've had the argument, like, I'm sure you've heard this too, that, well, it's fine to shoot what I like, but my client wants this. And I'm like, they want your take on that.
Right. Exactly.
And to know how to do that
it's like people have asked me to do portraits. One in particular was a girl's mom who her daughter dances in Nashville for the Nashville Ballet. And I have a background in ballet, and she knew my photography work. She knows my architectural work. She knows, and that's the reason why she asked me to take photos of her daughter. So we went down into the city and took photos of her daughter in the city. So I have a dancer, but they're also in an architectural context, many of them with the city surroundings, you know. So, no, I don't want to take portraits unless you're asking me for the right reason, you know. I don't want to shoot your wedding.
Well, and you could have just as easily said, I don't shoot dancers, because, you know, we all think of dance photography and people who shoot dancers in cities and other places. And you're like, I don't do that. But what you did, which is what a lot of people don't, it's like the lens, you know, figure out how the lens sees, figure out how you see, put it together. And I saw your images. They were so unique and so gorgeous. And just like, you just got to commit. You got to, you know, go face first into it.
And she knew too. And I've had, you know, I always, people who ask for portraits, I'm like, you're familiar with my work, right? You know, so you don't have to, and you don't have to say yes to everybody. You know, if they're a client that keeps asking you for things you don't want to do, then they're not the right client.
Right. I know that from voiceover, you know, I mean, I've quit a couple clients who just kept asking, we love your voice, but then they would want to change everything about it. And they're like, you don't love it that much. And I really don't love you. So, so yeah, you got to be sort of discerning. But I think this business of I always say, photographer, know thyself.
And that's, I was just
Because
going to say too, it's be true to
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Say more about that.
I feel like I've always been that way. So a lot of people
Yeah,
struggle with that, I think, just in general in life. But I've always
yeah,
been, I'm who I am, and if you don't like me, I don't care. Too bad. Um, you know, and I'm fortunate because I was raised to believe and do what I want. Basically, I mean, within reason. I still got in trouble for doing things I wasn't supposed to do, but I was given the opportunity and the like, I wasn't given any like walls, or you're supposed to be in this box and this is what
right,
you're supposed to do. So I feel very fortunate that I have that way of thinking because it's allowed me to do what I do and have the outlook in life and the outlook in how I shoot and what I shoot. Um, that's a part of how I create what I create is because I
right,
have that open perspective and
right.
a different view on things than a lot of people do.
Yeah. And you
Um,
really have to be open. You got to have the softer side of Sears open along with a steak knife in your other hand. You got
yes.
to be fierce. You got to be fierce about standing by, how you see and still stay open. So you stay permeable, but well
Yeah.
defended.
Flow. Yep.
Very Tai Chi.
Yes.
So God, I can't even believe we've been at this for about an
That
hour.
cruised.
Whoa, that's fast. So tell people where to find you.
All
I
right.
wanted to ask you just
Oh,
real
yeah.
briefly about your sea tour
Right. I
because
have,
you have that coming up, and I want people to understand the incredible what you offer them. I mean, to be in your presence when you're photographing is
I,
incredible, as well as to get to go and see the things that you see.
I have a guy actually called me one day and was going to be in town for a business and I met him and he was like that I learned more from those 2 hours of walking around the city with you than, and we didn't even walk around the city. We walked like maybe, I don't know, probably not even a mile of where we were. But
Yeah,
so I have a sea tour, Chicago fall. It's September 1st through 4th. So it's 4 days. I have plans, but not totally, this is what we do every minute of every day.
right.
Because
Because you flow,
you
you
can't,
go with
you
what
can't.
is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's certain things, obviously we do a tour inside the Rookery building, which is famous for the spiral staircase.
I love
And
those
then we
images.
do the architectural river tour, which is amazing. And I do it all the time because you see a different perspective of the city from the river. And you're down like on the river and seeing the buildings from different ways
Right.
on the river. Um, and we just kind of wander, I mean, I have specific areas we wander to. We go to the Bean because that's, obviously people want to come to Chicago and see certain things. So I make sure we do those. But I also make you work for the Bean because, you get your big shot of the Bean like everybody has, but like we're talking, it's been shot and photographed billions of times. So like,
Right.
how do you do it differently? And those are the kind of things that I try to help people with during my tours. Take your shots, take your, whatever it is you want, and then let's work a little harder and find something else.
It's so valuable because in a short amount of time, you can take people places that they can use forever.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. It's almost like building obsolescence, building the need for what we do into an obsolete now, the desire to maybe be with us or be with you or take, like, I want to do what we did in Chicago, but I want to do it in, Amsterdam,
Right.
is totally legit. But a lot of times people make you feel like you can't do it without them. That's like a way to build longevity into your
Oh,
teaching.
right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
But I love the
guess.
way you do it, which is you really freely give the information so people
It's
can
like
run with
raising
it.
your kids and going, okay, get out of the house now.
Right. Like, I don't want you hanging around
Right?
me. Yeah. We may want to take a trip together. We may not. That's good if you want to
Right.
come with me, but I don't want you to need me because that's
No.
just weird. Yeah. I'm the same
But
way.
it's fun. But I mean, that's the joy of it for me, though, is like in the last time I did a Chicago tour, it was like, it's people watching me where my lens is pointed and being like, what are you looking at? And then
Right.
they'll be like, oh my God, I never, they don't,
Exactly.
they're seeing something that they wouldn't have noticed before. And it's
And then
just, I love that. I
you
love being
can't
able to,
unsee it. You can't
right.
unsee it, and you
Yes.
can't unsee the way
It's
of
like when you
seeing.
start seeing faces and things, they're everywhere and you can't stop seeing them.
So tell people, I'm going to put the
Oh, all
links
right.
in the post, but tell people where to find it.
So I'm that's at seewithlauri.com, SEE with Lauri, Lauri.com. You can also go to laurinovak.com and you can find it there too. You'll find it through there from tours and mentoring.
Good deal.
Lauri Novak photo is my social media tag.
And you do mentorships and you have a
Mentoring.
session program if people just want to have like an intensive time with you. And that's hugely valuable. Also, I've been watching some of your students over the past couple of years, just like, oh my God, it isn't even the same person. So it's great stuff. So
and it's a passion. I enjoy helping people. And like I said, I like seeing them, like you like to see their light bulb go, like,
isn't that the best?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I'm watching that in my, artist voice. You guys all heard me talk about it. Well, that's going on now. And it's, I'm just watching it. It's the first time we've done it online. And I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. It's amazing what I'm seeing. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I'm teaching a gear class in the upcoming Kelby One Live gear conference. And you can find that, whether it's on my Facebook profile or on Instagram or wherever. You can find it in my link tree, which is, in the bio or the intro of my profile. And then my website's KarenHutton.com and KarenHuttonArt.com to check out all the rest of it. So I hope you do. And I hope you guys found this as much fun and valuable. This is gold. Thanks, Lauri.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.